Yo, what is up guys, Demil's back with a brand new video with day 2 of Call of Duty Black Ops 4. This game dropped yesterday, I've been playing it a shit ton, and as a result, I managed to get these two gameplays that you're seeing in the background. I think they're pretty good for my own standards. I thought I got some really nice moments, some really nice shots, some really good streaks, so I thought I'd put those in the background as we talk about today's topic. I'm not going to waste any time, let's get to the topic at hand, and it's actually some pretty good news. In Call of Duty, we don't really get a lot of good news with the current games. A lot of the times it's negative news. Call of Duty has been under fire for the past few years when it comes to a lot of their business models, but let's talk about supply drops, because as a lot of you guys know, a lot of attention has been brought to this subject recently, where there have been a few changes with the supply drop system for Call of Duty Black Ops 4, and I'm going to get into that in just a moment. But let's talk about the history of supply drops and how supply drops sort of first came into Call of Duty. For anybody who doesn't know, supply drops were a feature back in Advanced Warfare. Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, I believe it dropped in 2014, and that was the first time we had ever seen supply drops, and a lot of people were on the fence on whether or not Call of Duty should have supply drops. Some people thought it was a great addition to the game, you know, add another layer of things that you can unlock, but then a lot of people, myself included, predicted that eventually they were going to get to a point where they were going to start selling these supply drops, and to nobody's surprise, Activision started selling supply drops back in Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. And in Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, this was a huge issue because guns back then in the supply drops were variants, and there were variants of weapons that were already currently in the game that you could only unlock through supply drops. This was bad because there were weapons in the supply drops that altered the way the game was actually played. If you had a base version of a BAL, it was going to be significantly weaker than a very powerful version of the BAL that you got in a supply drop. And the drop rates for these weapons, considering how many things were stuffed in the supply drops, was very, very low. The chances of you getting a very good weapon were pretty low, which encouraged a lot of people into buying supply drops, which is a terrible system because for people who don't want to dish out thousands of dollars to get all of these weapons, this is a very unfair business model, and it's extremely anti-consumer. But unfortunately, it didn't stop there. Call of Duty brought back supply drops every single year since. They brought them in Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, they brought them into Call of Duty Black Ops 3, which to this day has the worst supply drop system ever. There are people out there who have spent thousands of dollars on supply drops in Call of Duty Black Ops 3, and they still don't have every single weapon because there was literally no other way to get the weapons except from supply drops, and crypto keys didn't drop at a fast enough rate for free-to-play players to actually obtain all of these weapons. I'm speaking from experience myself, actually. I played Black Ops 3 for a pretty good amount of time, in my opinion. I managed to reach over level 400, and I did not unlock a single new sniper in that game, which was extremely infuriating to me. I didn't get the RSA, I didn't get the DBSR-50, I didn't get the Dragoon, and I didn't get the XPR-50. Not a single new sniper in that game I got my hands on. The only times I got to play with them is when I picked them off the ground from people who got lucky or spent a lot of money on this system. The supply drop system ended up making a return in Infinite Warfare, and a lot of people consider Infinite Warfare supply drop system to be one of the best systems out there. To me, it's not the best. I personally feel like another game had the best supply drop system, but supply drops made so much money for Activision that they decided they were going to stick supply drops in Call of Duty Modern Warfare Remastered. The game did not ship with supply drops in the game initially, but a few months after the game's release, they saw that a lot of people were playing Modern Warfare Remastered and they weren't playing Infinite Warfare, myself included. I have never actually even launched the game. I've only played Modern Warfare Remastered. I bought Infinite Warfare but decided I wasn't going to play it. I was simply going to purchase the game for Modern Warfare Remastered. So supply drops ended up coming back into Modern Warfare Remastered, and Modern Warfare Remastered system is actually very, very good. It's a very fair supply drop system. If you play the game a lot, you can rack up enough credits in that game, or I don't even know what they were called. I think they were called armory credits back in Modern Warfare Remastered. You could rack up enough armory credits so that you could purchase the weapons by themselves and you wouldn't have to spend a single dime on them, which is a pretty fair system. But after that, after Modern Warfare Remastered, supply drops made another return into Call of Duty World War II, and this is probably the best system that we've had to date. It seems that with every passing year, supply drops get just a little bit better. I would would say that World War II has had the best supply drop system so far, because they made it so that you could obtain weapons in the game even if you didn't want to spend money, which I thought was a great system. If you had enough depot credits from opening up supply drops, if you played the game enough, you would rack them up through supply drops because you'd start earning them at a higher rate. They also gave you a good amount of depot credits back for duplicates, which as a result gave you more, and that allowed you to unlock whatever weapon you wanted, to the point where I did play Call of Duty World War II. I quit a few months before Call of Duty Black Ops 4 dropped, but to the point where I did play the game, I had every single sniper that was available, which was very cool. Probably the best system to date, but even though people were happy with the system, they weren't happy with the fact that supply drops were still part of Call of Duty. Not many people wanted supply drops to be part of the game, myself included. It doesn't matter how good the system got, it was still very hard for me to justify supply drops coming back into Call of Duty. But surprisingly, with Call of Duty Black Ops 4, even though we saw COD points available to be purchased, we have not seen any supply drops in the game so far, which is very, very confusing. A lot of the times games will drop with supply drops immediately. They'll be cosmetic only, and then a few months later they'll probably add game altering weapons into the supply drops. But this year seems to be a little bit different. Call of Duty Black Ops 4 didn't drop with supply drops. In fact, they have not mentioned supply drops at all when it comes to Call of Duty Black Ops 4. They haven't announced whether they're going to be coming into the future. They are not currently in the game right now. We have heard nothing when it comes to supply drops, but we did get an official statement from Activision talking about what they're going to be doing with the reward system in this game. The fact that they're going to start giving out weapons through this system called a supply stream or something like that. It's not official yet, even though it is kind of official because they accidentally leaked it themselves, but then they took the post down shortly afterwards. The supply stream is supposed to be an alternative to supply drops. It's similar to the battle pass from Fortnite in the sense that you pay a straight up fee, and then by playing the game you can progress through the game and unlock items for free after that point. Now, a lot of people might be wondering, why is this better than the supply drop system? Because at the end of the day, you're still paying money for in-game items. But the reason this is way better than the supply drop system is because with the supply drop system, it was essentially like gambling. It didn't necessarily come under the regulations of gambling because you couldn't make money from supply drops. If you got something extremely rare from supply drops, you wouldn't be able to sell it in a traditional sense like you could, say, skins on CSGO. So it wasn't considered gambling, but it was very similar to gambling in the sense that you had a very, very small chance of winning anything good from these supply drops. It was essentially like a slot machine. You would put your money in, and then you would have a small chance of getting a reward. They could get away with this system because technically, no matter how many times you open up supply drops with real money, you are getting rewarded with something. Even if you have every single piece of content in the supply drops, if you open them, you will get depot credits, armory credits, or whatever. So even though you might not get what you want from supply drops, you are still earning alternate rewards, which allows them to get away with it because it's not like they're just taking your money and giving you nothing in return. When you buy supply drops, you should not expect to get anything good. The chances are against you, and you should be aware of that. But the reason the supply stream is such a good route for Call of Duty is because you pay a straight up fee, say $10, and then you have the option whether or not you're going to work towards those items. If there are weapons locked behind the supply stream, you pay a tenner and then you play the game, and you will be able to unlock them naturally without having to dish out thousands of dollars on a broken supply drop system. This is huge for Call of Duty. This is one of the greatest pieces of news that we've heard in years from Call of Duty. We seriously never thought that they were going to stray away from supply drops and go with a different system. Now, of course, as I'm talking about this isn't set in stone. It was officially announced through Activision from a leak, but anything could change. This is their system and they can do whatever they want with it. But if they decide to go down this route, this is huge. This could seriously bring Call of Duty back. This is the one factor that determines whether people are going to come back to this franchise, because a lot of people actually quit Call of Duty because the system was extremely unfair and people didn't want to take part in it. And even though I didn't want to take part in funding this broken system, I decided to stick with Call of Duty, and I was hoping that one day they would stop this, they would stop selling supply drops, and they would go down a route that was much healthier for the game. I wanted to touch up on why I feel Call of Duty is going down this route where they're ditching supply drops Drops, and instead they're going down a Battle Pass like DLC model. The first reason why I think Call of Duty is doing this is because a lot of the competition out there is starting to stray away from loot boxes. A lot of game developers simply see loot boxes as a problem, and as an attempt to take the fan base away from Call of Duty and to their own product, their own game, so that they can make money, they are trying to appeal to the people who are against loot boxes, who are against supply drops. And so they're coming out creating games and saying Call of Duty is releasing supply drops and they're charging you for in-game content, but we're going to give it to you for free. Or if they're not going to give it for free, they're going to give it at a flat fee in the same way that Fortnite is doing with their Battle Pass. And so I feel like with a lot of the increased competition in the market right now to get rid of loot boxes and be a lot more consumer friendly, Call of Duty are trying to go down the same routes. They are realizing that the market is changing, that people aren't stupid anymore, and that people really hate this system, and they are trying to get ahead of the curve and make sure that they are one of the first game developers to get rid of this. This is why competition is so important. If competition wasn't a factor in creating video games, you would have big organizations like Activision charging us an arm and a leg so that we can get these weapons out of supply drops, and they would have no reason to go back on this system. They would have no reason to discontinue selling us these products. Another reason why I think Call of Duty is trying to stray away from supply drops is because certain countries around the world are trying their best to ban loot boxes, and this is very bad for companies that decide that they're going to continue with supply drops, with loot boxes, because eventually if it gets to that point where countries ban loot boxes, that is taking away a huge portion of a game's sales, because they cannot sell that game in that country unless they remove supply drops from their game entirely when it comes to selling them in that country. However, it's really difficult to make two separate versions of a game and release them at the same time. Of course, it is only one feature, it is only loot boxes, but releasing a game in one country with loot boxes and another country without loot boxes, it's essentially like they're two different games at that point. Will these people be allowed to enter lobbies with other people who have content from supply drops? It starts to spark up a lot of controversy, a lot of difficult questions to answer. So I think Call of Duty, as a result, instead of going with the loot box system, they're going with another system that could still make them a lot of money, but is legal, that is going to be available for the entire world, so that they don't shrink their player base down by even more. I think this is the best change to Call of Duty ever since we went back to boots on the ground. This was a huge issue. Supply drops, as much as I loved Call of Duty, as much as I tried to support each and every single developer to make the best game that they can, I could never get behind supply drops. I hated supply drops. I hated loot boxes. I wanted them to disappear. And finally, that day has come where we might actually see a future in Call of Duty without supply drops. I want to hear from you guys. I want you guys to leave it in the comments below. What do you think of this change? Do you think it's a positive change? Do you think it's a bad change? And if you think it's a bad change, I'm sorry, but it's not a fucking bad change. This is some of the best news that we've heard in Call of Duty in a long time. So tell me what you guys like about this, and what do you think that this has to offer for Call of Duty in the future. But that's pretty much it. I'm gonna wrap it up here. So yeah, guys, that's pretty much the end of the video. If you guys enjoyed, make sure you smack the like button. If you want to stay up to date with my content, please be sure to subscribe. I'll have my last video in the corner. If you haven't checked that out already, definitely make sure to check it out. I'll have my Discord link at the top of the description if you want to play Black Ops 4 with me. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks very much for watching. Peace out.